History on Lowell. I am Maritza Grooms. I'm joined by my personal professor, Bob Forrant. And we have another Bobby here today, Bobby Tugbiyele, a small business owner, a Lowell resident, a husband, a father, a homeowner, a UML alum, and a current candidate for Lowell City Council. Welcome, Bobby.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So one thing that I really love about Lowell right now, a thing that's happening is we've had Krista Brown from Free Soil Arts Collective come on the show and talk about the visualizing Lowell's Black history and just making Lowell's Black history more prominent. And one of those things is you might see now in downtown Lowell and around signs up, and there's a trail. And one of those signs we're talking about somebody who I never knew about until this year, until this project happened. And I think, Bobby, you actually gave me a bunch more information, and I'm so grateful for that. But Birdie Malbury. And Bobby, do you want to talk about Birdie? Tell our audience who Birdie Malbury is.
Sure. So again, thank you for having me. So Birdie Malbury, in the research that I acquired from the Lowell National Historical Park, and what we see throughout downtown Lowell now in these signs was, and I'm going to read off. So Birdie Malbury was the first Black woman in Lowell to enter the race for City Council. She worked with anti-poverty and social services programs, most notably Community Teamwork Incorporated, and advocated for Rent Control Board. 3 days prior to the preliminary election of her first city council run in 1979, someone threw rocks and set fire to her office in 2 separate incidents. She ran several more times for office and had her last run in 1989. Her personal motto was treat all people with equality. So that's what's displayed downtown in the signage, but there's been other clippings that I've received over the last month or so in terms of Birdie's influence, her legacy, her impact in the city of Lowell. And just to reiterate, she ran 5 consecutive cycles, 1979 through 1989, lost every single time, was victim to violence, victim to hate, victim to racism, call it what it is, systemic racism, victim to blatant, implicit, explicit, all of that, but still kept trudging along because she believed and she had a vision, and she was bold, and from what I've been able to kind of garner from other conversations with people who have been in this community much longer than I. They have a recollection of Birdie, and they remember her as being someone who spoke, truth to justice. She spoke her mind, and you knew when Birdie entered the room. And so that's something that I think is American history. It's Lowell history. It's things that we should be talking about, juxtaposed to the history of the Mill Girls. I mean, this is live. This is women's history. This is feminist history. So, and as a political science major and history minor, it's just it's amazing. It's amazing and tragic, but inspiring.
And she, from what I've been able to read and looking back at newspaper articles, she moves here from Florida.
That's right.
And settles in Lowell, and right away, there's an article I found in the Lowell Sun that says there must be more than one Birdie in Lowell, because everywhere you look, she's like a force of nature in Lowell. She's working with Black teens. She's working in the high school. So I found this
Black fashion shows.
Everything that you can think of, she's got her thumbprint on. And then when I went back and I looked, it said she took classes for a while at historically Black college in Florida before she moved to Lowell. And the motto of the college was enter to learn, depart to serve. And so I felt like when I saw that, that was like, okay, that's exactly what she intended to do. And really, again, sort of brought that, what she had taken away from that college motto, enter to learn, depart to serve. She had taken it to heart. And I think, again, it's really important for people in the city to know. And frankly, I think I know a lot about Lowell history, but sort of coming across her story a while back and starting to read the newspaper articles, it just struck me again as like how skewed the story is, and how when it's that skewed that way, just as you were talking a minute ago, it distorts and sort of it creates the city as being this very one-dimensional monochromatic place, and it misses the vibrancy and the vitality of somebody like Birdie.
100%. And, we could have this conversation solely on race. We could have this conversation solely on gender. We can have this conversation on economic development. We can have this conversation on public safety. Birdie's legacy in Lowell cuts across every single area that we're talking about today. Mm-hmm. That's what she touched. There's another clipping that I have of her advocacy efforts in Belvedere. I believe her office was in the Highlands, but she was advocating for the Belvedere neighborhood group. I believe they were complaining at that time. I think, I don't want to misspeak. The clipping doesn't say the year, but I presume it's in the 70s or the 80s. But that neighborhood group complaining about the area turning into a slum because of the city's failure to maintain its buildings. We're hearing similar things today. And Birdie, who worked for the city's code inspection department, said the building is the basis for Chestnut Street being a slum. It's a hazard. It's an eyesore. It's dangerous. Could be easily torched. So this is someone who didn't live in Belvedere, but was advocating for neighborhood integrity, in another part of the district, of the city, excuse me. So Birdie, not, as you mentioned, from Florida, came to Lowell, immediately immersed herself in the city that she was a blow-in, but she became a Lowellian by choice, by choice. And that is so important. Choice, where you choose to live, where you choose to stay, where you choose to invest your time, where you choose to invest your resources, where you choose to have children. And Birdie did all of that. She had children, and unfortunately Lowell lost her. She wound up relocating to Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia, Fulton County. And from the other research I was able to compile, the work that she did in Lowell, she took to Fulton County, and she was given her flowers while she was alive. She did a lot of amazing civic engagement work, community work for entire communities. And I believe at her funeral, mayors were there, dignitaries were there. There was a Fulton County named Birdie Malbury Appreciation Day. I believe it was August 14th. What's the year? 2014. Just imagine if we retained Birdie. Imagine, and it's not even just about her, it's about all the Birdies, because she's representative of a lot of people who were either born in Lowell or ended up in Lowell and were either chased out or stomped out. And how sad, because again, we can look at this from a racial lens, but if we look at all the different ways she impacted the city, this would have been great for Lowell, just as the Mill Girls are great for Lowell, just as you name it, whatever you want to pull from Lowell's history. Birdie is part of Birdie is Lowell.
How
Yeah.
much of her campaigns, so running 5 times,
Yeah.
but also running as a newcomer to the city in a way, and then trying to run in the old political arrangement in the city of elections at large, and her having to bump up against old Lowell and frankly sort of white third generation French Canadian Irish immigrant Lowell. How much of that do you think made it difficult for her to run? And we can't obviously get a do-over, but now with the organization of the election structures more, with several neighborhood seats up for grabs as well as at large, do you think that might have changed things or perhaps made it a bit easier for her to win? I'm just wondering because I
Yeah.
feel like when I read her story, she's in a way, she's challenging in many respects the system that then the recent voting rights lawsuit sort of raised up again, right? It's sort of like you can almost look at the campaign for the court for that settlement actually starting with her first run in 1979 in a way, because everything about her candidacy reflected, right, the way it would be, it would deny equal ballot protection, right, which is what the Voting Rights Act and what the recent lawsuit were really all about.
I would have loved to know her and meet her. I feel like Birdie is just I just would have loved to meet her and just, you know, have coffee with her or whatever. But some of what we're talking about in terms of the system, the environment around her, um, little counterintuitive as well, because you would think that um, those forces that you mentioned, Bob, um, contributed to her lack of success in being able to win 1 out of those 5 times. And yes, those forces were there. But Birdie, and through all the clippings that I received, I don't see her being quoted. I don't see her complaining much about the systems. I see her speaking more about missed opportunities of the communities that she belonged to. So, for example, and again, a woman who was not from Lowell, she came from Florida and she rolled up her sleeves and made it happen. So I could see a situation where, and this is 1979, 2 years before I was born. So what do I know? But if I, putting myself in her shoes, she's new to the scene. She's not known by anyone, by all the different enclaves that you mentioned, plus the black folk that were there already. Like who does she think she is? I could see that happening. Her trying to make things happen, and maybe she doesn't get a lot of support from her own people. Maybe she's definitely not going to get a lot of support from the establishment. So maybe she's just trying to push this rock up this mountain, this insurmountable mountain, but she's trying to do it to bring her people together and trying to say, we can do this, we can do this. I know I'm new, but we can do this. And she's not making excuses, but she just wants to get stuff done. And one of the quotes that I was able to find from her 1979 loss was, a big percentage of the reason I lost was because of the failure of low income and minorities to register and vote. Until we wake up and realize that the only way we will ever get representation is by doing the necessary things to gain it. As the saying goes, to get a piece of the pie, you go after it. No one will bring it to you. And so, but she also talks about the struggle. She talks about, I have been in this struggle for a long time and have watched how Black leaders were treated, and some even died because they believed that all men were created equal and that we deserve to be treated with human dignity. Blacks and minorities, before they get anything, have to struggle and fight. So this is what it takes to get the best time, if this is what it takes to get it, the best time to start is now, because I feel like the fight will be long and hard. Man, prophetic,
Mm.
prophetic, prophetic. What Birdie was talking about in 1979 is what we're talking about
Here we are.
42 years later.
Yeah.
And so when I say that this is tragic, inspiring, sad, exciting, I really mean it. I mean, but it also fuels me in the sense of, I don't got time to make excuses. I don't got time. Birdie didn't have time, but we're still talking about it. So we've lost a lot of time.
Mm-hmm. Well, I remember one quote I came upon from her when she was asked, why is she running? And she said, it's not because I'm a Black woman, but because it's time for change.
Ugh.
And that one stuck with me because I feel like that's a thing that we discussed when you told me that you were running. It's not about this, it's because it's time for change. And you, Bobby, I feel like your story kind of reminds me a little bit of Birdie. You're a blow-in a little bit, but you became a Llewellyn, and you're here, and you've been for as long as I've known you. I remember, I think one of the first times I saw you, you had one of your sons you were wrangling in, probably on your shoulders, but you were definitely speaking in front of a crowd. and I'm not sure if it was Sam or Ellis, but he was trying to get to the mic too. He had some words to say.
Yep. Sounds like Sam. Sounds like Sam.
Yeah. But you've been a voice for change for a long time in Lowell. And I want to commend your efforts, because I know for a while we were probably on opposite ends doing different things, but still working towards the same kind of systemic changes.
Yep.
But here we are now, we're friends. I call you my big bro. And
absolutely,
it's time for change. And you're running now, and it matters. It matters. You're carrying on this legacy that Birdie established so many years ago. And a lot of the issues that she was dealing with the Lowell City Council, even then, that was during the time of, urban renewal and whole neighborhoods being demolished, and we had different types of diversity than what we were used to. It was ethnic diversity before, but everybody was able to assimilate and rise to some form of power. But it changes in the 70s and 80s when we have, more Hispanics and Southeast Asians and Black folks. Like I think of the Hale Howard neighborhood and the demolition of that neighborhood, and how much history and culture and community was stolen from so many groups of people.
Now, let's be clear. When you say Black folks, you mean people like you, because my people, you see what I'm saying? So,
yes.
So that's the other part, maybe in the introduction. So I'm first generation, my American. My parents came from Nigeria in 1971, 72-ish. It's so important that as Black folks in the diaspora, let's just put it that way, that we understand that there were people here who came, who were here in America before you came in 1972, 73, that sacrificed to get you those freedoms that you take that you benefited from today. And this was on the backs of African Americans who died, who sacrificed, who fought the everything for us. And so that's part of history too, and that must be acknowledged. Southeast Asians who came as well benefited from work, from legal fights that African Americans were part of generations before they came. And so this is not to, marginalize or demean, or this is not about that, but this is just to acknowledge history and be honest with history, and understand that it's alive, and it's still impacting us today.
And
we can't revise history.
Yeah, I mean, and thinking of this as you're talking as a history teacher, when it's not taught to link those things, then it gets missed, and then we fracture. And so if you think again of the more recent history of the city, of the large numbers of Southeast Asians who came to the city, The large numbers of people from Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, other parts of Central America, Colombia, all those parents eventually start fighting the schools to provide quality education for their children. They're stonewalled by the Lowell public school system, and they then use Brown v. Board of Education, landmark civil rights case, as part of their lawsuit against the city of Lowell, saying, wait, we're part of the fabric here, and the law says equal access to quality education for all kids. It doesn't say only for these kids. And then when the voting rights suit happens, and a significant number of the plaintiffs from the city in that suit are from a really diverse population in the city, they basically graft that lawsuit onto the Voting Rights Act, which is passed in the 60s on the great struggle of Martin Luther King and John Lewis and other people, Fannie Lou Hamer. You can like name a whole bunch of folks, right, that sort of push that. And then Lowellians are saying, wait, equal protection, equal voting rights for everybody. And that's the challenge that they make, just like 4 or 5 years ago, right? It's only been settled in the last couple of years. But you're right. I mean, and I wonder, I think about this a lot in terms of thinking about how is the history curriculum constructed, for example, in the Lowell public schools, to pull that thread through? Because my feeling is it's probably being done in some ways, but it's not being done systematically, and it's not being done across the board.
Right.
And that the story just gets missed. And so somebody like Birdie probably is not in the standard curriculum that's taught in the Lowell public schools. They'll teach about Rosa Parks, which they should, but in a way you can say Birdie in some sort of symbolic way or whatever is sort of like the Rosa Parks of Lowell, if you will. And it's not to diminish Birdie, right? But in terms of like, we're okay within Lowell teaching about Rosa Parks, but what about somebody from Lowell?
Well, 100%. And so, but this is why we have educational partners and assets that we can leverage in the via the parks. That if this is not in the standardized curriculum, we need to take advantage of these assets around us and incorporate that into continuous learning. Because there's in my opinion, no student who has gone through Lowell public schools should leave Lowell not knowing about Birdie. No student. And I mean no student. And so many students leave knowing about the Mill Girls, right?
Yes.
It was right. So we can do something about that. So yeah. So in terms of Birdie and just her legacy, Maritza, in all humility, I'm just someone who wants to just change sounds so trite after a while, right? Because we've been saying change forever. I don't want to say change. I think I'm just someone who wants to see Lowell be better tomorrow than she was yesterday. And we hear that a lot from our leaders, that that we can always do better. We can always do better. Yeah, great. How do we operationalize that? Great. How do we put that into action? And so it's just not rhetoric. And a lot of these are coming from well-intentioned folks. I get it. But intentions and perception are two different things. Intention and perception are two different things. And so part of the many reasons that I'm running is to not just talk the talk, but to walk the walk on a whole host of issues. Certainly diversity, equity, and inclusion being one of those, but we're in a pandemic too. And I think what is going to be good for everyone, including our communities of color, is economic revitalization, and what that looks like. And also, how can we ensure that we're doing good economic development in an inclusive way, meaning that we are harnessing Lowell's strength, which is its diversity. And Bobby Tugbiyele didn't make this up. Birdie didn't make this up. Every single strategic plan from local CBOs state that diversity is our asset. So again, we're going back from rhetoric to how do we operationalize that? And so that's where I think I can come in and really provide not just good ideas, but from my professional experience in human resources, as a recruiter, as a systems thinker, as a coalition builder, as Bobby, as a black man, as an first generation American, as me, as everything, you know. I've picked up some things along the way, and I want to use those skills to make Lowell better tomorrow. And so those conversations will not be easy. We'll get into debates, but they need to happen.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today, Bobby. I think I'm personally looking forward to celebrating you as you walk the walk in Birdie's footsteps, and
That's right.
hopefully, you know,
and on her shoulders and others.
And on her shoulders. And I know also that you will continue to create opportunities for everybody who comes after you. So thank you for doing this. Thank you for coming. Thank you for running, and thank you for everything that you've already done for Lowell and what I know you will continue to do, win or lose.
Win or lose. You know, we're Lowellians, and we're invested. We're not going anywhere. So if I can make a quick plug, my website is www.bobbyforlowell, and that's BOBBYFOR Lowell.com. And on social, whether it's Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram, it is at Bobby for Lowell. And I will also say, as a first-time candidate, it is very, very challenging raising money and getting your name out there in a city where you're not a legacy incumbent, you're not a legacy candidate. And so it's very hard. So I would ask that anyone please support this campaign. This is a campaign that's multicultural, that's multi-generational. We're looking back to people who have invested in Lowell of all cultures and persuasions and belief systems. And we're also making sure to include people who got here 20 years ago, like I did, or 20 days ago. Anyone who wants to be part of change and make Lowell better tomorrow, we're with it.
Yes. Let's make Lowell better today
right.
and tomorrow.
we're a bridge forward. That's the campaign slogan, a bridge forward.
I love it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bobby. Thank you, Bob. And thank you all for tuning in. This has been History and Lowell. Yay.
Have a good day.